Hi there, boils and ghouls. So I've already filmed and uploaded a review of Us, and if you want to watch it, there's the Thin. I actually didn't intend to talk any more about this movie, but the more that I sit with this movie, the more that I find myself thinking about it, and the more confused I am. But I just had so many questions that I felt like maybe I should do a video, and this is going to be a spoiler video. The other one had no spoilers in it. I'm just gonna ask a few of my questions. Maybe some of these have answers in the movie that I just didn't notice. Maybe these are things that other people are confused about too. So this video is going to be very informal, but more than that, it's going to be just completely without structure. It's just going to be me asking several questions and giving zero answers the whole time. But maybe once I get all of these questions out, it will help me explain a little bit more how I felt about the movie coming out of it. So without further ado, let's ask some questions. Okay, so I want to start with the son, because I'm very confused about what's going on with the son. I did say in my review that I thought that he was supposed to be some form of non-normative, and I kind of leaned a little bit towards he has PTSD. And the main reason why I thought that was because the mother was established to have PTSD as a child. And I know that it's not inherent, but there was mention of something happening before the events of the movie. Like, they kept saying that something had happened a year ago, and I'm not sure what that something is. They also make some sort of comment about how this year has been really hard on him. He's lost his grandmother, that's made clear too. And there's some sort of deal being made out of him locking himself in that closet, which I know that that's a little bit foreshadowing for when he locks the shadow of himself in that closet. But why was there such a big deal made out of something that happened a year ago? And something about that closet. The theory that I eventually came up with, and I do not at all believe this theory, like this is just me spitballing here, because his shadow version was burned, I kind of wondered if maybe a year ago when they were up at this cabin, the boy had been playing with one of his magic tricks and maybe accidentally set a fire that almost burned him, while his shadow self was actually burned. That would explain why the boy has some sort of PTSD, while his shadow version is burned. Except, Shadow Lupita Nyong'o makes some sort of comment about how the boy was born to fire. So I assume that he's had those burns since birth. Maybe I'm wrong? I don't know, I'm confused. Let's jump straight to that twist too, because I have a lot of questions about that twist. Okay, so we find out at some point that the Tethered are a group of people, clones, you might say, of the primary people, the primary world. They're clones that live underground. I think that they've been created by some sort of government institution, because Shadow Lupita Nyong'o makes some sort of comment about how the clones were used to control people. And earlier in the movie, the daughter had said something about how the government was trying to control people by putting something in the water. So I feel like that was supposed to tie in, and that the clones are just tools to control people in the primary world. Except, what happened to this government institution? Why did they all clear out? Where did everyone go? And when they went, why didn't they take care of what they left behind? Why didn't they kill all of the Tethered when they left? Was there some sort of like uprising where the Tethered killed the government people? Because if there was, then why did the Tethered just go back to doing what they've always done afterwards? Why didn't the whole big uprising that this movie is entirely about happen after they killed the government people? And that brings me to another thing. The Tethered seem to have absolutely no choice but to recreate the actions of the primary people. Like, they make it very clear that they do not want to be repeating the actions of these people. They have no choice. They are not happy. If they could stop, they would. So why do they stop when the child version of Lupita Nyong'o's character shows up? I know that the explanation that's given is because she can dance, have there really been no dancers before? Just ever? So this tethered community is just full exclusively of non-dancers. What about other artists? Can other artists break people out of this then? How was it that she was the one that was able to, like, rally them into an uprising? My theory for this would be because she's capable of speech. Maybe after the shadow version of Lupita Nyong'o's character switched places, the primary version of her, the one that lives underground for the entire course of, you know, this plot, maybe she was able to speak to them and communicate to them what's going on and make them see what conditions they were living under and encourage them to rise up and stop this. Except the movie itself focuses so much on the dancing as that being what broke them out of it. And even beyond that, Lupita Nyong'o, like the shadow version of her character, has very clearly not spoken in a long time. Her voice is weak with disuse. So what? In my review of this movie, I came to the conclusion that the amount of white rabbits were there to be an Alice in Wonderland reference. But I'm also just mildly confused about how there were so many rabbits down there. Like, they were clearly using those rabbits for food, so you'd think that at a certain point they'd run out of rabbits. Although I guess that bunnies do breed like bunnies. What was that thing about Hands Across America? I'm not American myself. Maybe this is something that I need to research a little bit more, but I don't understand why that was the thing that they were recreating. Although I did later notice that there was some sort of interesting thing going on with the movie's title, Us, and, you know, US as in America, and then Lupita Nyong'o's shadow, when she's asked what they are, they say Americans. There was very clearly something going on with that. I'm not entirely sure if the fact that I didn't pick up on it is because I'm not American, or if it's because I need to do more research, or if it's because it wasn't explained very well in the movie. It could be any combination of any of that. Going back to the sun, because I'm actually kind of intrigued by what I think that they were trying to do with the sun. I feel like there was some sort of big plot that he was involved in that was kind of dropped. I thought that they were building up to something, in particular connecting him and his mother. There was something going on there. Like, she very clearly favored him above all other members of her family. And the shadow version of her even very clearly favored him over other members of the family. Like, his shadow version is literally a pet to his mother. He purrs like a cat and rubs his head against her hand. So I kind of thought that maybe they were going to explore their connection, and they kind of do a little bit. At the very end, he seems to be the only one who's aware of what she really is. But he doesn't act on it or comment on it. He just kind of pulls his mask down. And I don't know if that's supposed to be hinting at something that I'm just too dumb to pick up on. What is the dynamic between them? I'm really confused. The only possible explanation that I can come up with is that she very clearly has parallels with anxiety, and she's had PTSD. She's very clearly dealing with some mental health problems. He is also clearly dealing with some sort of mental health problem or personality disorder. I'm not sure what's going on with him. They're both non-normative, so I kind of wondered if maybe they bonded off of that, and that was why they were so close, I think. And while we're on the topic of the children, let's move on to the daughter, because I kind of expected more from the daughter. Like, her character is just kind of like stereotypical teenage girl who's on her phone all the time. But they did go out of their way to foreshadow the fact that she was a track star, and that and that her parents wanted her to go on to become an Olympic athlete. So I thought that that was foreshadowing something, especially when the tethered show up. And the shadow version of Lupita Nyong'o tells the little girl to run. And at that moment I was like, oh my god, they foreshadowed this. She's an amazing athlete. She's going to be able to escape from the monsters. She's going to be able to do something. Nope. That is not at all what happens. Let's see, what else do I have to be confused about here? Oh, and while we're also on the subject with the children get to be the perpetrators of some pretty graphic violence throughout the course of the movie. I know that the idea is supposed to be that each member of the family kills their own shadow, but the kids end up, like, beating a lot of people horrifically, and all that I could think is how they are not gonna have normal lives after this. And I kind of thought that they were going somewhere with the theme of violence, like I didn't really know where. But they open the movie up with Lupita Nyong'o telling her children not to look at the corpse that they're driving by because, like, she didn't want them to be, like, traumatized by that. Completely understandable. But, like, half an hour later, they're bludgeoning a woman over the head with, like, a golf club thing. I don't play golf. And then Jason later on walks in on his mother, beating one of the tethered, and there's, like, this deal that's almost made out of it where he's, like, very clearly traumatized despite the fact that he's already beaten several people. But I thought that there was going to be something with the role of children and violence, and it just never turned out to be anything. And what was it that made the shadow version of Lupita Nyong'o so unhappy with her shadow family? I know that they say that she has no choice in being with her husband, because he is the shadow version of Lupita Nyong'o's husband. So I guess that they were just going with the whole, like, she has no choice in her life, except she completely has choice in her life, because she is the one that broke them out of all of this. She's the one that inspired the uprising, because she can dance. I just kind of felt like they could have fleshed out the shadow family a little bit more. In fact, a lot more. Like, for example, when the shadow version of Lupita Nyong'o is introduced in the shadow family, when they first corner the primary family, she introduces the daughter as being a little monster. And that's literally the only thing that she says about the daughter at any point. And I was thinking about that because I've been thinking way too much about this movie at this point, like you can probably tell. And I was thinking about how interesting it would have been if every member of the shadow family kind of had character traits that the primary family had, but like up to 11. Like they kind of hint a little bit that the primary daughter is a pain to Lupita Nyong'o. Like she's not listening to her, she plays on her phone all the time. So maybe it would have been interesting if the primary daughter was, in her mother's mind, you know, a monster. She doesn't listen, she's unruly. And then the shadow daughter is literally a monster. Again, doesn't listen, super violent, kills people. And then they kind of hinted that the father was maybe a little bit selfish and didn't really listen to her all the time. So maybe we could have that with the shadow father. Like he literally takes things from shadow Lupita Nyong'o to a grotesque and gory, maybe, extreme. Like have it all be from Lupita Nyong'o's perspective and just make it like these are their flaws and the shadow people have it times 10. I was considering mentioning this in the review, but I ultimately decided not to because I wasn't entirely sure if I thought this when I reviewed it last night. But I do think the movie would have been stronger overall if there was only the one shadow family. Like there were so many twists that I thought that they were building to that they just kind of didn't. Like every time that I think of this standard plot of there being like a good family and then an evil family, or like a good character and then their evil doppelganger, every time that I think of that I go to things like The Wizard of Earthsea, a lot of plots where the good version, at some point has to come to terms with their evil side. Learn to accept them, learn to embrace them, learn to know that they're not perfect and that they need to come to terms with this. I didn't really feel like there was anything to that extent or within that vein in this movie. Like it wasn't so much parallels so much as it was, you know, just like I kind of expected it to be the evil family as a parallel or a mirror image to the primary family. But they don't really explore that. It's not like the evil family is there to give us any deeper understanding of the primary family and their dynamic and their problems and blah blah blah. They're just kind of scary because they think like the primary family, I guess. I just felt like there needed to be a little bit more done with the idea of parallels. To my memory, there were like no parallels. I do think that their idea of turning it into a global event where there are like hundreds of twins that are all killing their equivalent, I feel like that kind of took away from what it could have been. Like if it was just this one family dealing with this, then they could have had more room to explore what the tethered were and how they related to the family and all of that kind of stuff. One suggestion that I've heard that I think actually would have been a decent suggestion for the twist at the end, when Lupita Nyong'o's character as a child meets with her double in the House of Mirrors or whatever, maybe what could have happened is that as a child she somehow encountered her shadow self, the evil side to her, something like that, and managed to split herself in half, manifest her shadow self into a real person. Kind of like the Wizard of Earthsea. Although that does bring me to another problem that I have with this, is there's a government facility that's made to house these tethered, to control people. It's supposed to be this huge secret mission that I don't even know how big this is supposed to be. But apparently it's not that big because the entrance to this secret government facility is in a carnival in Santa Carla. I also don't know how they didn't expect any of the tethered to, like, not escape, because literally their only security is that the escalator only goes down. That is the lamest security I have ever seen in any movie ever. Another suggestion that I've heard for an alternate twist to the movie would be something along the lines of the shadow family is actually the real family, and their happy lives are just something that's going on in their head, maybe just some fantasy that they've come up with to cope with the horrible reality of their real life. I feel like there was a really good plot at some point. I feel like the ideas that this movie has are creative. There was a lot of potential with this. But I don't know what happened. I don't know if maybe Jordan Peele wasn't given enough time with the script. Maybe something got cut and added in. I don't know. But it feels like we're missing a big chunk of the story. And I'm saying all of this because I've been thinking about this for way too long. And I feel like I'm making it sound like the movie is really bad, but it isn't. It's an incredibly well-made movie. The performances are amazing. I'm not trying to call out any of the actors or anyone behind the scenes. I still love Jordan Peele. I still want Jordan Peele to keep making horror movies. The visuals are great. The sound is great. I didn't mention the soundtrack in my review, and I should have. The score was amazing. I'm not saying don't watch it, because you should. I still think it's a great movie. I just had so many questions. Honestly, the only reason why a lot of these thoughts occurred to me is because I couldn't stop thinking about this movie. Is there anything else that confused me? Speak now and forever hold your peace. I don't think that the tethered should have been explained as much as they were. Like, maybe if we just kept it with Lupita Nyong'o's speech at the beginning, when the shadow family first takes the primary family captive, she gives that whole speech about how every good thing that they've received the same thing, but with a darker twist. If they just left it at that, and then left the rest up to your imagination, that would be fine. I don't think that we needed the explanation of them being some sort of government experiment, mind control, blah-de-blah-de-blah. Maybe that's a big problem that I have with this, is I feel like they tried to explain the wrong things and keep the wrong things in mystery. It had no understanding of what to explain and what to leave up to the audience's imagination. Anyway, that's enough making fun of a movie that's actually really good and that you should actually go see. And on that note, thank you guys for watching. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, all that jazz. See you guys next time.